Good. Okay, the recording's in product. That's in my way. I'm gonna say got it. Okay. Are we all together?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So Homa had a good morning. I went back to the beginning and I listened to all of our conversations, all four of them. And you have a very interesting life. And it's made up of very complex relationships, more than most people. And I'm trying to figure that out. So what I see is that you're a person that can imagine an outcome of something. You can imagine what's going to come forward or what you want to come forward. Yeah. And that's a large focus of the four conversations that we've had. And it leads me to think that since we're all interested in learning and teaching, I mean, this is what we do on this. What I would like to hear you talk about, if it makes sense to talk, if it doesn't, don't talk that way. But my sense was that we have a very good sense of the power of your professional life and of your ability so deeply to organize programs that engage people very deeply in ideas that you care about helping them learn. And that even though you talk about we're all friendly and we all do this together, that's true. But that you've got a job to do in every one of these grown-up work environments. And that's really fascinating. So I can't find a question, for example, in there that says, you were a mother.
Yes,
you were a wife. You were in that awful 1970s when all of us women didn't really have all the privilege we have now, right? Is that right?
60s, 70s, all of that.
All of that. So that leads me to believe that you are, let's see, how do I do this exactly right? You have a great capacity to imagine a new world. You do. And you see all the parts that's all around, and you make the relationships work because you're charming, you're good, you're kind, you're soft, and you're like a rock. is you're going to do what you need to have done, no matter what the group is that you happen to be with. And that's something that's so intriguing about your capacity in this world. I mean, it really is amazing. But we don't get when do you have any juggle of any awful things that happened to you because you were a woman?
Well, I mean, listen, I think it's not so much of course, a lot of things, you know, I mean, going to college and the first thing the counselor said, you should study home economics, or you should study, you become a teacher because God forbid something happens to your husband, right. You need to have a job or you need to be a good housewife, you know. Mm-hmm. But that's 1960, 59, you know, yeah. And that's not a message that the other women didn't hear. And I wanted to be a plastic surgeon when I left Iraq, you know, and my mother wanted me to be a gynecologist because she had a hard time giving birth to me.
Really? Yes. That's so interesting.
And so the dreams that I have had heard from my own family was always, you know, you're capable, you're going to do other things than be a housewife and cook. Although that item was also very important. I loved cooking, and I'm a good cook, and I cooked that big dinner last night. Um, um, but the messages were a foreign woman in Utah was just gonna, it was, first of all, it was a novelty. They hadn't seen that. Secondly, it was the stereotype that she's gonna, she probably wasn't married because most girls in Utah in those times were married in high school, after high school, or as soon as they found a husband in college, and then they would drop out.
Right.
And I was determined to study and move forward.
What did your parents say to you when you represented that? And I'm asking this question for when I decided I was going to get a doctoral degree. My father sat me down and said, if you do that, no man will ever marry you. That was my father.
My father also told me that he had talked to his personal physician, Dr. Sharp, that everybody adored. And he had said the same thing, that Homa is going to lose all of her chances of getting married. And doctors, women who are doctors are not going to be good mothers and good wives. So nobody wants to have really a doctor as a wife and a mother.
Right.
That was the message. That was exactly the same message. But on the other hand, my father, one night I came home and I fell in love with a guy who was an actor, a Shakespearean actor who was teaching us how to speak English with a good accent. And I fell in love with him. And I was determined I was going to be also an actress,
Is that Marshall, or am I? That's not Marshall, is it?
No, it's not Marshall. It was Alan Grandstrom.
Oh, okay.
And I have to tell you another story about Alan Grandstrom and how naive we were in those years. I fell in love head over toe over Alan Grandstrom, and Alan Grandstrom was going to do, I think, Macbeth. It was a play, and of course I went, and our family, all five of us, would go to the same thing all the time. So we had front row seat in Macbeth and at the University Theater, and I had bought 12 red roses, and I was holding them to give it to him at the end and all of that. And of course, all of, anybody who was at the university, when an event happened at a small university, everybody goes. Mm-hmm. So everybody saw that at the end, Homa Mahmoudi gave 12 red roses to Alan Grandstrom. My father was not opposed to it, and he really actually loved, he had translated some of Shakespeare's work into Persian. So he was really, really excited and very happy to see the play and Alan's performance. The next day, we went to, and I was determined to become an actress. The next day, a group of guys, students from university, men, came to our house, and they said they had to talk to my father. And that mother and I could not be in the room. So we went out, and after a while, dad came out and he said, I don't understand what these guys are saying. They're saying that Alan is not a man. He is interested in other men. And and the word in Persian is actually pretty gross for a person who's gay.
What is it called? What's the language?
Bachebaz means pedophile. We
Okay.
don't have, yeah.
Oh.
So, and my mother said, they are just jealous because Homa is in love with Alan. And these guys always wanted to, hit on Homa, and she wouldn't respond to them. So they're just jealous.
Yeah.
And besides, there are no kids around Alan. Alan is at the university and he's a wonderful guy. I mean, we had no knowledge of homosexuality at that time. And that's 1960. And really, our family had, the adult relationship of gay men and women we didn't know about. And I mean, it was it was a very naive family when we came here. And but I continued loving Alan. But I was going to tell you that my father gave me permission. He said, "Yes, if you're going to be the best actress in Hollywood, go be it." And my love affair with Alan fell apart, and I fell in for some engineering guy, and I wanted to become an engineer. Again, he said, "If you love it, go do it." But I graduated in secondary education, French and Spanish, because I wanted to fly and I wanted to be an airline hostess. And those days, to go international, you needed 2 or 3 languages. And again, or become work for United Nations. I was always interested in something global. So the agenda that I had in the house with my parents and the agenda that the university and the professors saw in me were 2 different things.
Okay.
However, I have to add a thing here too, that I had a French professor that wanted me to go to Harvard University and study old Persian languages and history and all of that. And in those days, the Defense Act was giving very good scholarships for those studies. But I was so scared of separation from my family, that I just didn't even apply. I just could not think of going to a place like Boston or Harvard and be away from them. Yeah, that part, that dependency was heavy duty. Yeah. And so maybe most of the reason that I studied and became a PhD was because I could do it from home. I could stay home. I came and studied. Came and taught French for 1 year in Pomona, and I was not happy at all. I was, first of all, I don't think I was a very good teacher because my students were not interested in French at all. They wanted to just finish the requirement, and I was very close to age to them. And we were talking about life and issues of the hippies and global issues and women issues. And these subjects were very new to them.
They're just out of, they know nothing about it, I guess.
They didn't know anything about it. Instead of teaching them French, we were always discussing these philosophical issues in class. And after a year, I decided that I needed to go either study psychology or, something that I could. Yeah.
You're like a devil in your classroom. They are doing one thing and you are doing another. And you're not going to let them get away with that, right?
That's right.
Okay. Okay. So that was one of those moments in your life where you faced something that was in the way of what you wanted to do in the world.
Yes.
So you didn't do it.
Yeah.
And takes real power. Where did you get that from? That extraordinary capacity of you.
My mom is very bold. My mom was, not that she did anything, but in her way of thinking, and she was very brave. She was very brave in the way she stood for what. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I had forgotten to close this. I hope we can edit this out.
Edit it out what you're telling me. right now, what were you saying right now?
No, I just, because my phone rang. No,
Oh,
what I saying, not, what my mother, she came from a Muslim family. She fell in love with my father and said, that's it, I'm going to marry him. She converted after 2 or 3 years. And she stood very strong in front of her family and society. And really,
oh,
it was her boldness and her courage and her sacrifice really that brought us to United States.
what? Okay.
Because dad wanted to come, but for her to leave the entire family, there were many other women, our friends, that now after 60 years they say, we wish we had followed you, and I was too scared and all of that. But mom came, and with all the difficulties of adapting to a small town, and the issues of, simple as cooking and stuff like that, she was not knowing the language. She learned the language. She uh, socialized with a lot of people. In a tiny little student apartment, my dad would invite all of the professors, foreign student advisors, and everybody that was there.
Mhm.
You asked me the question of what was it that as a woman um, I was um, people stopped in front of, prevented me from growing or whatever. I don't think it was so much of that as the few places that I have regrets in life is when I listened to men. By that, I mean, they would come and tell me their opinion about something. And because the person was a male, maybe a senior member of our family, or in my eye, a prominent man, um, although I wanted to go a different path, I would change my path and listen to that person. And it happened, I was going to get a real estate license in 1978. And I almost was finished with the course. I was taking it at nighttime. I was doing my psychology job and everything else. And I thought I was always interested in business and real estate. And I thought, a lot of people were coming from Iran at the time, and they always was asking me, where should I buy a house? I was helping them. And I thought, why not? I would become a real estate person, and then I could also make the money. One of my uncles came one night when I came back from a class and said, oh my gosh, I am so embarrassed. They told me you're going to a real estate class. Dr. Mahmoudi, in Iran, they respect you as a psychologist. To become a pity, in Iran, they are looking at them like um, what are those people that they come and endorse your signature, like
Oh,
notary,
yeah,
like a notary. He
right.
said that she's becoming a notary now. I mean, even if she's notary is no big deal. But that voice in my head embarrassed me that, I'm doing something shameful, it's not, and I didn't do it. I probably lost millions and millions of dollars as a result of that. But I never resumed it, it would just, there were points like that, play times like this that really affected me. Yeah. But there were also a lot of men. When I first came to California after I got my PhD, um, we went to a cocktail party. My husband was hired at that time by USC Medical Center. I didn't have a job when he came. And Dr. Felton, Gene Felton, he's a very famous occupational physician.
Mhm.
He met me at that cocktail party. Here I am. This is 50 years ago, 52 years ago, young, fresh out of Utah. I had just defended my PhD. And he came to me and he said, "What's your name? What do you do?" And there were no Iranians really here at that time. And I told him, "I'm a psychologist. I just graduated and I'm Iranian and I'm Baha'i." He said, "Good. This is exactly the person I'm looking for." I was just shocked, He said, "We have this huge grant from law enforcement administration in Washington to develop psychological testing for police officers. Mm-hmm. And I need to talk to you. Come Monday morning," give me his business card out of his pocket. And I said, "Come Monday morning and talk to me." And he and he said, "I like you because you're basically," he said, "because you're so green. I really don't know. You're not affected by," it was Vietnam War. People had opinion, especially social scientists. They were, against cops and they were calling them pigs. And, there were riots at UCLA. And he said, "No, I need somebody that has values that is not affected by that." It was a compliment, and yet saying that, you really are, and that opened the door to me to become UCLA professor and learn so much about law enforcement, this country, crime, racism, sexism. The whole package was there. And it was a great learning, great learning.
Right. What were you actually learning when you were doing that? What feature of policing?
Well, there were several segments. I was in charge of psychological testing. I tested 500 police officers.
Oh, wow.
And then there was another segment that was the physiological segment. Another person was in charge of that. There were two of us, two researchers. Psychological testing was not hard for me to do. I had given a lot of tests, and it was computer scored at the time, so it was standardized, and we knew what we were doing. Mm-hmm. But then they told us that in addition to developing the testing, there were a lot of stressors on police officers after they got selected that nobody really had looked at. Psychological stressors and other things. And you know what? Those policemen in those days, they were so, I don't know, I don't want to call them masculine, macho, and that they never wanted to show any weakness. Mm-hmm. We went through any of the diseases that are psychologically related, like high blood pressure, asthma, skin disease, depression, none of that, nothing in like that, migraine headache, nothing in their record. They all said that if we have an illness, we don't go to the county doctor, we go to a private doctor, so it won't go in our record. Mm. So we both decided to go on a ride with police officers through different neighborhoods of Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, what a way to learn the city. We were in the police car, but we were going to some of the most dangerous places in Los Angeles. And we would ride on Saturday nights from like 10 o'clock at night till 5 o'clock in the morning to see really the troubles that is happening. And in addition to seeing all of the trouble, we also saw poverty, we saw victimization. Poor little grandma has a small TV, and the grandson who's an addict comes and steals her TV. Police was called on that. So you saw the degree of crime and poverty and lack of access to services and education in a lot of the communities around Los Angeles. In East Los Angeles, we saw a area that really didn't speak English at all. I spoke Spanish, but it was very, very eye-opening, a big eye-opener here, yes. And the stresses on these police officers that they are really going to places that they had guns, they hated them, and they had to go and intervene with a lot of things. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it was that.
So that was a moment of enormous learning because you knew nothing at all about
Nothing at all.
their lives.
You know, we had one police officer in Logan, and there was never a murder in Logan. And 5 years after we left, they thought somebody murdered someone, but then it was a suicide. It was a really calm, friendly little college town. So to be hit with the huge LA Sheriff Department that is 20 miles, Los Angeles is 20 miles long and 20 miles wide, the area of Sheriff Department. And we went on a helicopter ride. And these guys, of course, they had just come back from Vietnam. They were helicopter pilots. They wanted to show off to this young doctor, I mean, they were swinging around in the sky. And they would, so every time would ride with him. It was just a riot. We also wanted to know what is happening in women's jail. So we dressed up as deputy sheriffs for 3 days, and we went on a whole shift in jail, and that's also
as prisoners. Were you asked to be prisoners?
No, we were the guards. We were the guards. Yeah, we were the guards. Yeah, or like guard trainee kind of a thing. Yeah. It's a very, very, you really develop a lot of empathy, a lot of understanding for both the victims and for the guards.
Yeah.
It's pretty harsh environment.
Were you able to figure out how your behavior has to shift under the circumstances that are as complex as that?
Could you say that again?
I hope so.
You will.
Yeah. Well, this was a very complicated environment that you were in.
Yes.
You had women who had been jailed. You had guards who were in charge of keeping order.
Yes.
Were there any men in what you did there? Did you get involved with any men?
Only at the doors, not inside. No, only at the gates.
See, but you could go inside with the women.
Yeah.
Is that right? So they saw it. Then did the head of the jail, did he himself support what you were doing because he thought that there was some reason to do it with women prisoners?
No, they saw it as we were help for the deputy sheriffs.
Okay.
They didn't see us as advocate for the prisoners, because that was we were doing. We were trying to find out how much, because one of the things that was happening in those days, women would not become sheriff for a few reasons. One was either they were very angry, brutal women that were very abusive, and so they would get fired, or they were really kind of a pretty little girls that they didn't have charisma enough to be respected. It was a very difficult age for women to become police officers, and they needed police officers. Mm-hmm. One thing was that the height of they had a height requirement that we lowered. they had something, a teeth requirement, I mean, flat feet. So we looked at a lot of those variables and requirements and we changed them. That for 1970, you really don't need to have all of your teeth to become a doctor, I mean, to become a sheriff. Apparently they had some kind of a bullet that they had to use and they needed their teeth. And flat feet, they are not going to walk that much, and their arches, they can put there in their shoes. So it was an interesting time. And then after we presented our reports, that height requirement doesn't need to be 6 feet.
Mhm.
There were not that many 6 feet women that could, join. Um, a lot of women became, and other minorities like Chinese, Hispanic, shorter men, that they were able to join the force. Yeah.
And when you were working with this particular group of policemen, did they respect you?
Not really.
Not really.
And on the one hand, we were dark. On the other hand, we were the shrink that, what do you do, doctor? I mean, it was, but they followed, they were obedient to the rule of the sheriff. And the sheriff department had to send out a big memo that these are big researchers, it's going to help you, accommodate them. But yeah, it was kind of, on the one hand, it was the order of the boss. On the other hand, these two young women were running around places that it wasn't too comfortable for them. Yeah.
And so what came to you when you were working in this very particular community and this very particular organization? Somehow you began to put together, or at least if I understand this correctly, a whole series of behavioral transformations which connected people that were previously really enmity with each other and evolved. Do you feel as though you had some influence, and that what evolved was a better understanding of the police for the people who were in jail?
I don't want to give ourselves that much credit, but I think that especially the police officers felt supported.
Mhm.
They felt that finally somebody came to see what a hard job they had.
Mhm.
Uh, um, uh, I tell you, the being in a jail, it's so stressful,
Mhm.
because really, both the people who are criminal and people who are guarding them, they're in the same environment. The sound of these doors clinging, opening and closing, it's so awful. It
Mhm. Mhm.
just hits you all the time. I mean, there is no rest. There are people crying. People are psychotic. It's always, it's a horrible environment. The smell of the place is bad. These concrete walls are just most oppressive thing you have ever seen. Um, the only thing that was very good in jail was food.
Mhm.
They had these people cooking that were very, very good in making pie and others. But you know, but the environment for these women who were guards there and what they were enduring was never, and they would get promoted very much because they would just stay at that level, first level of guard. And they were very upset about it, that, nobody really knows how hard this thing is,
Mhm.
how difficult this job is. And sometimes they were short of staff and they had to work 2 shifts,
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. And did you have any influence at all on or raising discussions of some of the things that you care about?
We wrote about every single one of them,
Hmm.
because we wrote them under stressors on the police officers. So they listened to that. You know, we put it, it wasn't a complaint. It was, it was identifying, if you want to have a police officer stay a long career, you need to lower the level of stress on these police officers
Mhm.
and promote them and have some rewards of some kind, appreciation, commendation of some sort. Yeah, all of those and you know what, they listened and they did it. Yeah, the sheriff, their pitches was very, very open-minded, and he really wanted to have a good department, and he said, okay, come on, tell me what to do. Yeah.
And he was respectful, I gather.
Yes, yes. The rate of recidivism was very high. The rate of really, after Vietnam War, people who were PTSD and they were really crazy. I mean, they would come and join the force because of their because they had military background. And then they would cause problem in the society. They would go shoot the hippies or, anybody they saw and as identified to them as enemy. Nobody accounted those in those days, but it was huge amount, and it was very embarrassing for the police department. So he was happy for us to be there and try to weed out these troubles things, and also identify what causes some of the. Do you know what's interesting? Psychological profile of a police officer and a criminal is identical.
Really?
The good police officer thinks like a criminal, and his personality is like a criminal. And often we talk to some of the police officers, oh, he had two brothers in jail in Oklahoma or something, So it was one became an officer and the other one was in wrong things. Also, they were, I wrote a paper called They Wore a Badge for 30 Years and studied police officers that had worked for 30 years in the police force, and they didn't get in trouble and all of that. And it was very interesting to look at that group of people and who they were. They were actually like more like a fireman. They were kind. They were people in the community knew them. They were talking to the kids. They were guiding the teenagers. They were, when they showed up in that neighborhood that often they knew, people were not terrified that, they arrested people. I mean, they enforced the law, but they were respected, and they had a more smooth career and a more longer career in the police department. Yeah.
Do you think that there were special kinds of captains in the high status policemen who were very grateful for what you were doing?
They were very few. They were younger, and psychology was not known very much then. And testing, but they were afraid that we might be testing them and getting rid of some people, or they were not too keen, many of them, on what they didn't know what is the effect of it is going to be. But on some of the younger captains, they were happy to see us do that, because also some of the hippie-like people had joined the force, and it was a disaster. They would go to arrest someone, and they would sit on the curb and talk to them, and they would be shooting happening in the community. So it was the really liberal, the really do-gooders
Uh-huh.
also would not work in the police officers. And so we had to weed out the two extremities. Yes.
Right. And so that you placed yourself, where were you in all of this? What were you learning and what were you doing?
Every single day I was learning. And I'm like, my eyes open and I was just excited and yeah. And it was a big pressure on us. And the other thing I have to tell you, those days when you had a grant and this grant was right out of White House, we would get to go to conferences, and we were number one. We were the first group in the whole nation that was doing this.
Really?
And we were royalty. We would go to these conferences and everybody would come and say, and I wrote with my husband, we wrote a book called The Urban Policeman in Transition.
With your husband?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't, but he loved police work. And in fact, later he became also a police psychologist. But I mean, it was interesting that what we were learning and what was happening, and there was no literature about this, and there was no psychological testing, and so we were trying to get anybody who was working at the NYPD and some of the other places to write for us and to talk about their experiences. No, we were at the forefront of a very exciting era.
And that was an era that was available to you because you had a PhD, because you were a psychologist, because you had a lot of information about the efforts that they had made, so that they picked you not so much to control them as to provide new ways of thinking about it. It's possible to transform the habits of everyday life inside of these prisons. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, I think also when I talked to you about Dr. Felton that hired me, his judgment of hiring a very non-threatening young Iranian minority, kind of brown woman, but I had very good education and very good research skills, was very smart. Because when I walked into jail or when I walked into sheriff's department, it was like a little secretary, it wasn't a big guy, football player walking in that would threaten the police officers or would make a statement that is, imposing. I think being a woman, which that he picked that, which in those days, we were very, very few women in psychology. Field of psychology was mostly men. It was very smart. And I think the success of our project was because of us being so non-threatening and so eager-eyed to learn and to talk and to not have a set of opinions, except for we are here to see how we can help you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that you were able to amass a whole knowledge base that didn't exist before. Is that right?
Yes.
Nice going.
And it's still being used. The other day, I was driving in San Jose, and at midnight, I was going back to my hotel, and I stopped at a green light. Nobody was there. A policeman was there, came and said, "Why did you stop at the green light?" I said, "Because I didn't know whether I should go to left or to right to go to my hotel, and this is the name of my hotel." And it was a short white guy and a short white girl. And I said to them, I said, "You know what?" But he said, "Okay, all right, we'll show you, but you shouldn't stop at the green light and all of this." I said, "Okay." And I said, "You owe your jobs to me." Because I said, you owe your jobs to me. I was the one who lowered the height requirement for police officers. And it's interesting. The next morning, they both of them came to the hotel and they wanted to talk to me a little bit more. And it was fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you carried charm around you.
Oh.
And a certain sense of what it is people need to hear, or how it is that is necessary to create a way of communication that would advance the very thing that you wanted to happen. That's not a simple thing to do.
You know, people have asked me about doing therapy and being a Baha'i, and because most therapists really are not very religious.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not religious in, you know, but I do value the Baha'i values. And so many people have asked me that do you have a value-free or do you have an opinion-free therapeutic sessions? And I always say no.
Mm-hmm.
I have definitely goals for my clients. I wanted, and they're very, very simple. I always, I always want the women to go to work and get educated.
Uh-huh.
And my mother used to say, you know, you just cannot see somebody sitting still in their home and taking care of their house. You just want them to go out. I said, no, mother, they need to. They're smart women. They just sit home and get depressed. They need to go out and find out what the world is and see that really their life is not so bad. They earn money. They feel better about themselves. And, or, you know, I have encouraged like little old Iranian ladies to bake cookies and sell them, or, you know, cook dinner, cook whatever, like a catering kind of stuff, in addition to other things. But yeah, I really, really am very invested in education of women, in education of girls,
Mm-hmm.
in learning anything, you know, just learn. And I had a list of things when I was raising my son, that I wanted him to know before he became like 12 years old.
Oh, okay.
Because I thought that was my only, that was my limit of my input, you know. And I wanted them to see a ballet. I wanted them to take him to opera. I wanted them to see a lot of museums. I wanted them to see poverty. Take him to a country that's very poor. Take him to an orphanage house. Take him to places that, you know, I don't know, Galapagos Islands, you know, places that it would expose him to the list, to my list.
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell you, I have always worked for emancipation of women and freedom of women and equality of women. And he was 8, and I was talking about, you know, how absolutely, and the sheriff department called me and they said, you know, we have women in the sheriff's department, but the captain of fire department is calling and said, are they going to ever be working for women being in the fire department? And I'm talking on the phone, and my Jason is there. And after I finished my talk, and he loved firemen. In fact, I think he became a doctor because he was interested in paramedics. And he said, Mom, whatever you do, please, please don't get women in the fire department. He said, firemen have to be men.
And what did you say?
I said, well, Jason, we have time to think about that. And he said, Mom, how are they going to work? There was a fire house near our home that ever since he was 2 years old, we would go stop there and talk to the firemen. He said, where is she going to sleep in the firehouse? You know, I mean, it was so, yeah, I mean, even with your best of, work, you have to deal with some of the issues of, sexism and move forward.
Right. Well, when you move forward, and another thing that I was intrigued by what one of your really interesting capacities are, is to imagine an alternative future for people.
Yes. 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 I always feel there is a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I always feel that I feel that happiness is being able to control your mind
Huh.
in a way that that is constructive and positive. And I've believed in that even before the happiness field came. That, let's see what other things we can do.
Mhm.
Let's see how we can be constructive. Let's see how we can move from this difficult place to someplace else.
Right.
And I have worked with the Iranian population that came after the Iranian Revolution to this country.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I must, somebody said I had close to 50,000 patients by now. Almost have gone through almost all of the families in Los Angeles.
Mm.
Because I worked at Cedar Sinai at the time, and
Really? Uh-huh.
all of the Jewish families that came, we had a program that would see them for free. They would come initially and they would complain about their kids, but they were really hurting. And to encourage them to encourage their daughters to be educated. They, like, so many families, they came here, and you should see the women now. And many of them, they say, whether it was through your talks or through your television programs, you always encouraged us to do something. Go to the near park and find out what they're teaching at the park. If there's ceramic class, take it. If it is a yoga class, take it. Just anything. Just, be out there, be with the people, grow up, And I still believe that. I still believe that there is so much in this world that we can enjoy and learn. And life is too short for it.
Mhm. Mhm. So you have a kind of way of presenting yourself that enables the people you're talking with or working with or creating ideas with, that whatever it is that you seem to do, they seem to find a way to do something that they might not have been able to do before. Do you think that's true, that that's what you're doing?
That's very true.
Mhm.
I usually try to find, I'm actually not very abstract or very sophisticated talk. I'm very simple and to the point. I'm not trying to impress my patients with my knowledge of, all of this. Or when I give talks, about whether it's child rearing, marriage, stress, or whatever. Uh, um, and I always want to use examples that people could understand or stories that they can relate to. In what you were talking about, I always like to find some strength, some point that this woman has says, I do this, and either I enjoy it or I do it well. Or my husband says, this thing that you do is nice and good, or my son or whatever. And try to develop that, go for that, at least reinforce it and say, do it. Or even if they can't do anything, at least appreciate in themselves that, I'm good at this. It's like self-appreciation, saying that, oh my, the I don't know,
That's
the
great.
the meatballs I make is really delicious, and always when I do it, people like it, or maybe I can do something about that, or maybe uh, one of the things that I have all these apartments in Los Angeles that there's one woman or one man living in it all by themselves and being very lonely. And I always say, if you have something that you know how to cook, or you have a TV program, go to your neighbor and say, come and eat this dinner with me and let's watch this program together. And a lot of them do it with playing cards. They a lot of but in other things too, I encourage them to do that. And with the young people, definitely. You have 3 kids, they're grown up, start doing something. Your kids will respect you more. You have to use your mind, learn, read, all of that. Yeah.
Now, when would you have opportunities to do that transcended what you would be doing under the auspices of your university, or of your connection to living professionals?
I have had like parallel careers.
Okay, good.
Um, when I started, after I did the police officer thing, I was hired at UCLA. One of my neighbors, a wonderful lady, Dr. Idison, she was doing a family styles project that compared families of kids that were in commune, hippies,
Mhm.
with a regular family and people who lived together.
Uh-huh.
And it was a big longitudinal study. Her name is Bernice Idison, very famous psychologist.
Yeah.
And she was also my neighbor, and then she wanted me to do the research there. Then I went, after that was finished, I went to a drug study at UCLA. And in middle of it was to combat heroin addiction with a new drug.
Mhm.
That was also a big grant, big grant. But I had done work with Peace Corps volunteers in the 60s. So when Iran came out with money, with the oil money was big, and the Shah wanted to develop the country, they came to UCLA and they said, we want to have relationship with you, and UCLA professors come to Iran. So I became the liaison between Iran and UCLA, and I loved it. I just loved that job.
Uh-huh.
Because it felt like I was able to help the Iran. We were looking at 20 different universities to establish in Iran. I mean, from the arts and the women colleges, and that's very, very exciting time. And I was going back and forth to Iran and stop in Paris and enjoy it, and stop in Rome. It was very, very nice time. I created my own company called Transcultural Communication Center to train executives of defense corporations like TRW, Westinghouse, Hughes Aircraft. They were going to Iran to, unfortunately, when first money comes, the guns first are sold to the countries, and they wanted to have some electronic corporations in Iran, and they wanted to send families there.
Uh-huh.
So I set up my own corporation, and I was teaching on the weekends with my brother and my husband. we were teaching how to adjust to a foreign country, and it was more about cultural adaptation, culture shock, issues on the culture and on the ways of management in Iran, family structures, a little bit about kind of folk ways and of the group, things that they should be careful about, not to, faux pas and stuff like that. So we were very successful.
Mhm.
We were very, very successful. Because our group, and then our group, we were teaching people very honestly. We weren't the Chamber of Commerce trying to show good things. We were telling them, these are the difficulties in Iran. If you want to go, you have to be ready for it. And also on Monday morning, after the course was over, I would tell them who would adjust, who would not. I would say yes, no, maybe on the name of the people, so they could decide whether they want to send them or not. But in my opinion, like this family didn't seem cohesive enough, or this wife didn't seem a woman that could adapt to a culture that difficult. So their return rate was very good. I mean, people that we sent, nobody came back.
Really?
Some of the other countries, they show them a movie about how beautiful everything was. They send them there and half of them came back. And it was very costly for the corporation. So we became, and it was really a nice time for me, because I felt that it really was the combination of all of the things that made me to have a bridge between cultures, to have a bridge between transfer of education, helping another country develop 20 universities, electronic development, issue of hiring of women. It was all of that made a big difference. And then to have these people who are going there. Remember, in the old days, it was the image of ugly American going places and all of that. And I always talked about that. And I said, no, we want to have you go there and learn about the history of Iran, learn about the poetry of Iran, learn about music. And we taught them a little bit about reading and writing and money, and gave them, in those days were cassette tapes and books that they would take with them. And I went to Iran and went to one of the executives of Hughes Aircraft's office, and he had picked up Persian newspaper and was reading it. So they really, really became interested, and they did. They learned about the culture and enjoyed that. Those kinds of situations. And I did training for Korea, for Saudi Arabia, for Egypt, we trained, it was a group from United Nations that was in Gaza between Israel and Palestinian. We trained that group. And to teach them how to respect human dignity and have understanding and learn in whatever situation you are about the culture and about the people. Yeah.
That sounds very, very Baha'i.
Very bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I'm saying that kind of has helped me kind of have a foundation,
Mhm.
and I'm comfortable with it. I think my personality and my way of thinking, I'm very comfortable with following that path throughout my life. That, we need to bring this world together in a positive way, through education, through learning about each other, and yeah.
Have you done any military work?
No.
No.
Military, no military.
It's out of your world, right? Mhm. Okay, just checking. So it seems as though if you were going to make a paragraph of your life from the time you were born to the time that you're sitting here, what would you say about it?
Oh my gosh. Um, it, I think it's I was, nobody chooses their parents. I was very blessed to be born in the family that I was.
Mhm.
Um, and um, and with the values that they were. We had a very gentle father who was very loving and in love with science and education, curious mind, and a mother who was also very loving and very strong and very brave. Um, and they saw education and basically the same value we are talking about,
Mhm.
oneness and unity of mankind. They're getting rid of it, prejudices and all of that, from the day we were born, and it
Uh-huh.
still is the same thing. We would go to Baha'i schools and they would put four hands together, like there's a picture of four hands, and they would ask us to paint one of them black, one of them yellow, one of them red, one of them white. I mean, we had never seen yellow, red, black people in Iran, but they were talking that this is put a circle around it and it's oneness and unity of mankind. And education is important and equality of men and women. I mean, it was from childhood, these things. And still today is the same value, is the same, I haven't reached any goals, unfortunately.
Well, but that's because you take such incredibly difficult situations.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but we are trying to work just a little bit at a time to this
Sure,
thing.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
marvelous life.
Thank you.
It's a virtuous life. It is, and it's so interesting. Uh, if you had to, and this is, you don't have to answer these questions. If I'm getting silly, you can tell me.
No, I
Uh,
will. Now that you said it that way, I will answer
okay, what?
it.
Okay.
Okay.
No, you can say you're all wrong, Barbara, and please do it because I don't want to go down the bad trap. You know,
Right.
you're very good at going out of the trouble parts. So am I. So if you were to take and look at the world that you inhabit and which is created in you a whole very sophisticated and very interesting notion of what the world needs to be, and that you have attached yourself to that kind of orientation in the world. When did you hear about that? I mean, this is a learning lesson, and I think that there you were in your family, there you were in your community, there you were in Iran, there you were in Logan, there you love here, there, and there, and there. It's if you were to identify what education experience you were able to have that made that possible, what would they be?
Well, the foundation was the the values that were given to us. But one thing that I have that is both my downfall and my asset is my unquenchable thirst for knowledge
Mhm.
and learning.
Mhm.
And and novelty and experience.
Mhm.
It's really hard to feed that because um, what happens is I still at this age, I'm almost 81 years old. Um, I get so bored easily. And I need to constantly feed that, Okay, what is which museum has what? Let's go, what lecture is going on, which constant, uh, feeding of that
Yeah.
curiosity. Like this year, I've seen every movie that was up for Academy Awards, and I religiously was studying the whole thing, Go to every museum. I mean, I'm going on a cruise with 700 Iranians, and I'll be talking there next weekend. It's like and on a daily basis, I need to schedule myself so I am stimulated and occupied and not just routine things. I like to do new things, interesting things. Los Angeles is a very good place for this. I always talk and sit with my friends and say we're so lucky to live here. I really consider us, myself very fortunate that at this age, I'm in a place that's safe, that's stimulating, that has great weather. We have good medical system, we have food, we have, clean water. I mean, all of these things that, the world is suffering from. Yeah.
Right. And it's your gift
It,
that that you have, but what you also want to enable it with everything that you do and everything that you have learned and everything you teach. Does that make sense to you?
yes, yes. Yeah, I like, it's kind of arrogant to say I'm a role model for many people.
That's
Uh,
sure.
and
Uh,
and also the other thing is, my son is very successful and a very, very kind and good doctor.
mhm.
But his personality is what people come and tell me. He said, when we go to Jason's office, we feel like, uh, he such love and such,
Mhm.
spend so much time with us. How did you raise him?
Mhm.
And I think those are, and he was raised with the same values, and and it's important. We all do it. We all have a profession. We do something, but it's our humanity that is the most important
Yes, yeah,
thing.
right, right. And it sounds as though, I mean, what you describe is a serial, a serial community mover who goes in a variety of diverse communities
Mhm.
and find in those communities or seek them out uh, the potential for goodness in any and kindness and love in almost any kind of community you want to be in. Is that correct?
It's absolutely right. It's absolutely right. And one time my father asked me, he said, why don't you get married after, I've been divorced for 35 years. And I said, Dad, nobody can put up with me because I said, which poor man can put up with this kind of a, I one day I'm like this weekend I'm going to a Cambodian exhibition and dinner and everything else, and then I'm going on a Persian cruise and I'm going on another thing in Gettyville. I mean this different
Yes.
aspects of my
Yeah.
interest. No poor man can be involved in this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I'm a woman who would be.
oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, well, it's quite remarkable. You're really amazing. Uh, and you've seen so many situations and so many sites and so many countries and so many families and so many schools
And so much tragedy.
and so much tragedy. Talk about that for a little bit. Somewhat, because you've seen that in the world.
Yeah. You know, tragedy, I mean, I taught in Africa for 3 months and I've traveled extensively in areas, India, Africa, Southeast Asia, wherever. Um, um, Humans being mean to other human beings.
Mhm.
Those are, and it's so unnecessary. And
Right,
you see
right.
that so much, yeah. And I mean, like at this point, what I've been working with a group of women. It's called Feminist Majorities. Is Mavis Leno, Jay Leno's wife. We've been working 35 years for women of Afghanistan.
Right.
And I mean, we are back to square one,
Mhm.
Um, I mean, and you feel so helpless. So you feel like there is nothing you can do really at this point. We're trying to get computers to them, but they don't have internet, they don't have electricity, they don't
Right.
have food, they don't have anything. I mean, yeah, I am very optimistic and very hopeful about the next generation
Mhm.
and technology.
Mhm.
I think I think with once we get this issue of internet internationally, I hope Elon Musk does it,
Mhm.
that everybody has access to computer and to knowledge. I think people are going to be kinder and nicer to each other.
Several of the founders of the internet I've had the privilege of meeting.
Mhm.
And there's an argument that goes on in that group,
Sure.
of course. But the most impassioned of these are men. The most impassioned ones are looking to save knowledge. They
Mhm.
don't want to lose knowledge. They want everyone in the world to have a cell phone,
Yes.
everyone in the world to have computers, everyone in the world to have an opening to see what the world is like. And they really talk that way, and that's very hopeful as far as I can tell.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I see that, once people have access to knowledge and are able to use that, it's very, very exciting. Very
Yeah,
exciting.
really exciting. It truly is. Well, I would like, and this has nothing to do with your life except that I have such great respect for it. It's really amazing. It is.
Yeah.
I want you to come to the Cosmos Club and to make a noise about it of some, just of some way to talk to a group of pretty powerful people who are pretty smart. And just to talk about whatever you think it's important to talk about. Would you consider that?
I don't know. I'm past giving talks.
Oh, all right, then you can't do that. Oh, so what are you not past doing? Oh, yeah, I want to join your tours.
No, I mean, when it become, to tell you the truth, anything that makes me work for it or have anxiety, I'm trying not to do.
Oh,
But
good, yeah.
yeah, Cosmos Club is pretty intimidating for me. Yeah,
Say again?
Cosmos Club is a little intimidating to come and talk. I don't know.
Oh, it isn't, believe me.
Okay,
It,
okay.
it, it isn't. You are smarter than most of the people in that place. Uh, uh, yeah, I know if it makes you nervous, so you don't need to do it, of course. And it's a little snooty, so that's also a reason not to do it. But I take that for myself as in my job over there is to talk about diversity with all those people.
Oh,
Yeah, so is there anything else, Homa, that you think you want to talk about that somehow we haven't covered that we should be covering?
I don't know. I mean,
Think about it. Think about it. This relationship between, you know, between the oral history and us, you know, is open. It's open to raising all kinds of issues in all kinds of ways.
mhm.
So I feel like I know enough about you. Do I know enough about how you're growing up as a child in the households that you were part of? Have those communities become sites of learning for people within your household and around your communities?
Uh, well, I went to a French school,
Mhm.
French Catholic school. So from beginning, I was exposed to European culture, French culture, literature,
Mhm.
all of that. Our house was, very rich with my father's friends that
Mhm.
would come over there. They were poets, they were writers, they were people who traveled to Europe.
Mhm.
I mean, people, first time I heard about opera was from a friend of my father's, about paintings and also we had youth group in Iran,
Mhm.
Baha'i youth group, that anybody who would come from Africa, from India or something would come and tell us about it was no movies, no TV, very few books. So it was just basically storytelling.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But I was very, very interested and inquisitive about that. Always interested, yeah. And really enjoyed what the culture that my parents created in their house. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
amazing. It's amazing. Uh, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you think is important for anybody who sees this conversation we're having? Anything else you want to make sure you put in there?
Well, I can tell you that at this age, I am grandmother to 3 kids.
Okay, we need to get that.
And Kate is 10, Connor is 6,
Mhm.
and Cameron is 4.
Uh,
And ever since Kate was born, similar to what the mission I felt with Jason, I felt I want Kate to be exposed to a bunch of things.
uh-huh.
So Kate and we go to almost a lot of museum. We go to every exhibition that comes to town, we go to that.
Mhm.
Tomorrow we are going to go to Science Center, all 3 of them. And I also have season tickets for all of the musicals that come to Los Angeles. So we have been going to see Phantom of the Opera, whatever it is that comes to town. We talk about, she loves science, so we try to go to science museum and get things done, or do watch different things about that. So go to aquariums, go to places that we can see different things.
Mhm.
But I feel very, very, I feel my time is very limited. So I
Mhm.
like to influence them in areas that maybe school does not provide. There's a lot in school, but to have firsthand experience is
Mhm.
important for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So that the teacher to those children as well.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
She was. She had to represent someone in her school, and she became Frida Kahlo. So I made her outfit and tried to make her makeup and everything else so she looked like Frida Kahlo. Yeah.
It's
So
great.
just the little things like this, that might, affect them, and then in addition to expose them to international way of thinking and appreciating what's out there. Yeah.
And you do that just by the nature of your life, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah, and fortunately, in this day and age, parents take them all over the place. They have already been to Europe and
sure.
Mexico several times. So they're going to Turkey this summer. So they're exposed to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Anything else that you want to talk about?
I think we have done good job.
I think we've done a good job.
Very proud of my little sister.
What's that?
I'm very proud of my little sister,
Yeah.
Hoda.
Oh, well, she's a wonderful woman.
She is a wonderful woman. She
Yeah.
has done so much. She has done so much. Yeah.
And what she's doing now is so Hoda. It's so much. She's put together these conferences and is connected to some of the most important scholar thinkers from everywhere. It's breathtaking. I mean, it's really, I thought I was good at it. I'm not nearly as good at it as she is.
Yeah, this year, some of her lecturers were just amazing, amazing.
Aren't they?
And also our brother has been, he has been my closest friend. And he is, it's interesting, my friends always, they all love him so much because he's such a gentle, wonderful soul, that kind and just, sophisticated and everything. So some of my friends said, I wish he was a Muslim man so we could marry, if he could have 4 wives, we could marry him. but he just is, he really has some of the real good qualities of what a sophisticated, gentle man who has no aggressiveness, no anger embodies. And it's a real pleasure to be with him and to be around him and his wife. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's really wonderful. Do you think it would be possible that he could enjoy this kind of a talk?
He would say no, but we can sit together and talk if you want to. You sure?
With you and him?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
You're protecting him, right?
Absolutely. I'm always the older sister. Always protective older sister. Yes.
Of course. Well, if he has anything, do you think it would be a nice thing for him to do, or would be painful? I don't want to do anything that's painful.
No, it's not going to be painful. Of course not. No. I will ask him and let you know.
And I am happy to have both of you.
Okay.
I'm going to have all 3 of you. Okay, well, that'd be great. Listen, thank you so much for sharing so much of your life. I'm so grateful. And it's
Thank you for asking us and being interested in our family. Yeah, that was wonderful.